What else have we been doing? So we had last week, you got to witness a lot of what we did last week, which was we tested through and checked all of the abilities and made everything work and found a bunch of bugs in how things work. In the time that we weren't streaming, we were fixing that and testing it more and making sure it all worked. That took a while. But now the game, most of the units and most of the powers and most of the abilities more or less work. There's still some effects that we need to get in and blah, 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 blah. So now we are almost ready to go start making the campaign. And, there's a process to this. There's a step-by-step process that you have to go through. One, does the basic game kind of make sense? Two, do you have all the main kind of features and things that you need to have in? Three, have you used all those features and things that you put in with interesting units and characters and stuff like that? Four, does your environment work? Does your map editor work? Blah, blah, blah. Once you're done with all of that, then it makes sense to go start building campaigns. Until you're done with all that, if you build campaigns, you're just going to have to go back and build them again. And one thing that you learn running a game studio, people really don't like going back and doing something again. They would rather do 2 hours worth of new work than 1 hour worth of rework. And this is just human psychology. People really don't like going in and changing something that they've done because they start thinking like, oh, I just threw away all this work that I did. What could I have been doing with that time that instead of wasting it on this? And it's hard to think to yourself, well, what I was doing when I was wasting time doing this was I was learning. I was learning that this is the wrong thing to do. It sounds cliche, but that's actually how iterative design works. That part of the process of making something is making shit that you're gonna throw away and testing it and saying, well, yeah, that's not good. I'll do something else. That's part of the process. But you want to avoid that as much as you can. And part of avoiding that is making sure that before you go build campaigns and things that are going to be sort of set in stone, the tools that you're working with, the basic building blocks that you're working with, are all more or less in place. So that's what we've been doing. And sort of the last phase of that is looking at the editor. I'm not going to make a campaign map today, but what I am going to do is we did a bunch of changes to the game. Some of those changes, a lot of those changes were involved with the environment. Specifically, they were involved with making the terrain more interesting. So, for instance, if you're in a forest, you can't shoot missile weapons as far as you used to. You get a bonus to your defense when you're in a forest. Same thing when you're in a jungle. When you're on flat terrain, you actually get a bonus to your charge because you can charge easier on a flat terrain. And actually, when you're in the farmlands, you actually have the ability to pillage the farmlands to increase your health. There's all kinds of nice stuff like that. When you're up on hills, you get a bonus to the range of your missile weapons and your artillery because you're up on hills. And so now, when we were playing through it recently, I actually really like it because it gives a real sense of place. It makes the maps not just something pretty, but it makes you actually think, oh, I'll put my artillery up on these hills. And people who understand the terrain bonuses do better in the game. It's a thing that you can master and know, and that's important to strategy games. One of the key elements of a good strategy game is that there are rules that are obvious, that people understand, that are hard to put them all together and master them and say, oh, I've got this unit that I put on this one hex that gets this bonus that's going to support this other unit. Being able to put together that is strategy, right? And it's a strategy game. So when you give the players the tools to come up with cool strategic plans, you make your strategy game a better strategy game. So actually, I like it. I like a lot of this stuff. And you have to think a lot about what map are you going to play and what's in this map. It makes the maps a lot more important in the game.